The time being 2:35, I'll call to order planning board meeting 1226, workshop for the Tilton Planning Board to discuss proposed zoning amendments to bring forth to town meeting in March. Has everyone had an opportunity to start reading them?
Yeah, me too.
Do you guys want me to read it off or just say first one?
I'll just go first one.
Okay, first one, first amendment. Any discussion, thoughts?
The bold is what the changes, more or less.
Yes. And just to let everyone know, this, this meeting, as I mentioned in my email, is being held now so that we can go forward with a public hearing. These are kind of draft materials before you right now, and I'll put them into more final form in advance of the public hearing. I'll have to send something to the newspaper like tomorrow about the hearing, so we just need to agree on what we are going with. But yes, Eric, in this case, the bold italic is what's added.
You might as well read it in if you're recording it, then nobody's gonna know.
Well, okay, but again, we'll have, we'll have at least one public hearing and another where,
Will come on January.
well, okay, I mean, I
don't
don't,
want to get the details.
I mean,
the details will be available, and it'll be in the public notice that these are available at the town clerk.
right.
But I'm not saying not to read it, I don't want you guys to, spend a lot of time that you don't have to, if you don't have to.
Catherine, I think you're on this committee. Do you have a problem with anything in here?
What committee?
On the housing, are you?
Oh, yeah, no, this will close a big loophole between that
And what?
ordinance and the zoning.
Okay, that
It's
was
like,
all.
right now, it's, the housing standard ordinance is up there all by itself like an orphan.
All right, so is everyone ready do we have to vote on these or just discuss them so that we can bring them to?
In the past, sometimes we voted, I think it's really not necessary, it won't get
Until
the
it's
sort
in
of.
final form.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we used a meeting like this to determine whether these were endorsed by the planning board, and that really doesn't need to happen until they make it on the ballot. So I feel like if everyone's giving me a heads up, then we're good at this point, I feel like.
So you could just do a consensus around the
Yeah,
table.
right.
Is everybody okay with number one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, on to number two.
So is this saying what I think it's saying?
Yes.
Awesome.
So what do you think it's saying?
I think, yeah, right, good point.
I mean, I know from your, I'm just, because of your
Yeah.
email, yes, it is saying what you were asking me.
First
It's eliminating the two-tiered buffer system. Yeah,
So
Going
we're
back.
eliminating the 100-foot thing.
yeah,
You're
That's not
eliminating
gonna go away.
a lot of stuff.
potentially.
Well, if this is voted in, we won't have to worry about 20 to 100 feet.
Right.
That'd be great.
But is that going to protect our wetlands?
Not as much, obviously.
Well,
I mean-
potentially it could be no change. I mean, it depends on what you mean.
This was written by the Conservation Commission, wasn't it?
No, it was written by DES.
Oh,
This whole section,
Yeah,
Wetlands Conservation District,
yeah.
this part of our zoning was written by the Department of Environmental Services for us?
Not for us. It was, so when we made the comprehensive changes, I guess it was 2 years ago, I think 90% of what's in there is the DES model wetlands ordinance. We brought back in the 125-foot setback for septic systems. I think we brought back in some language about salt storage and other things like that. We pulled back in a few things, but by and large, it's the DES. And certainly that 100-foot buffer addition was from the DES model ordinance. That was not something that was introduced by.
Wow, okay. I just thought I remembered meetings with the Conservation Commission to discuss these sections.
We definitely did have meetings
Okay.
with the con, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
Nope.
So why go from 100 feet all the way to 20 feet?
Well, we don't have to. I think why is it being suggested? I think the idea is going back to one uniform buffer around all wetlands features. I think, in the end, if we keep it where it is, I think we gotta accept that we don't have the data necessary to always make the right determination whether it's going to be a 20 or 100 foot buffer. We're relying in part on the applicant's wetland scientist, which, it's a stamp. They're certified, state certified. Their certification, relies on whether maintaining their certification relies on whether they're accurate. Just like we trust the engineers who put their stamp on our site plans, it's relying on the wetlands engineers to get it right. I think we had a recent case where 2 sets of engineers got it wrong. Wetlands scientists got it wrong. But this is a thought. I've heard comments of people saying, why not just go back to the 20 foot? This is very complicated. In my why the change comment, I wrote currently 20-foot buffers exist around most features. However, 100-foot buffer also exists for others. This 2-tiered system has proven inexpedient to enforce. It's one way we could go, I guess. I'm not of the absolute opinion that we can't continue to stick with the 100-foot buffer. It's just what I was getting for comments was that people thought it had become too complicated.
I think it's pretty simple. It's pretty well spelled out now. It is difficult to enforce 100 foot wide because we're so developed now. But I think 100 feet down to 20, I think 20 feet isn't enough. Not for open water that goes to drinking water supplies.
Well, okay,
It's like
is there-
Silver Lake is a drinking water supply.
Yeah, so is there another way though, where we can have it both ways, where we can, have the 20 foot, but if there's some reason why we need to protect something from 20 to 100 feet, for instance, because of a drinking water or some other reason, there's so many other laws and rules and guidelines that we have, can we use those?
I think you'd be writing a novel.
No, not to write more.
I mean, if you were going to do that with this,
If there are reasons to
you'd be writing a
check
novel.
things,
Also,
then-
But I'm thinking if you went to 75, 60, or 50.
But then shouldn't we do that for everything?
Well, no, because wetlands, open water. Personally, I'd make it 200 feet. That's personally. But I can't have everything I want. So open water goes to other sources directly. So let's take Ice House Pond. Goes to the brook, goes to the Winnipesaukee River.
Okay, so-
Now you're talking about, you're not just thinking about water pollution, you're protecting the life that lives in those bodies of water.
And of course, we want to do that, but aren't there already protections in place that would protect them
but
or mitigate that?
I'll come back. Julie, I think why put it on the planning board to identify times when it should be above a 20-foot buffer when we already have a system where if you're in the 100-foot buffer, you can still do a lot through a conditional use permit. So I guess I'm kind of arguing against what's here on this paper for this moment, to sort of have a conversation about what you propose. I don't think the planning board should have to, and it seems for a board of 7 people, it seems kind of difficult and maybe not really efficient for the board to sit at a meeting and try and come up with, additional buffers that need to be applied when you could just leave it the way we have it now, say, so you've got a 100-foot buffer, if you want to do stuff in that buffer, you got to come forward with a conditional use permit application, or potentially get a variance. There are ways that people can do things.
Okay, so to argue against what you wrote here, I mean, should we make everything 100-foot buffer then? To make it consistent now?
It seems too much.
I think there would be too much of a hardship.
What if, I mean, is it, Catherine, are you suggesting maybe, say, a 20-foot buffer and a 40-foot buffer, or a 50-foot buffer, or something like that?
Well, so personally, I like it the way it is, a 100-foot wide buffer. I think one of the problems with the planning board is we don't take our times enough when these come before us, and somebody is going to develop next to open water or vernal pool over 500 square feet, wetlands adjacent, blah, 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 40,000 square feet. We don't take the time to use our arsenal, which means we can require the applicant to hire a wetland scientist, or we can hire one and have them pay for it, just like we've done with the engineers, to determine, okay, what is the wetland buffer here? Where is the 50, 75, 80, 100-foot mark, whatever we decide? Where is that? And then take the time to discuss what's allowed, what can't take place, what can take place. In the end, we kind of worked with M&B Tractor, with Ice House Pond. And we did take some time to do that. My problem is we didn't take time to work with them on the other body of open water.
What's the most important thing here for you to protect, or the most important issue, would you say, with the whole wetlands thing? What comes to your mind as the most imminent threat?
Groundwater, drinking water, and wildlife. I have a well.
Right, well,
I have a dug well.
I'm thinking, okay, so in the case of NB Tractor, was it wildlife?
For
I mean,
MB
what
Tractor
was it
specifically for me,
I mean, what
was the
I'm trying
wildlife.
to see what people's priorities are, as far as what are our goals, our ultimate goals?
The environment.
Protect
I
our
mean,
environment.
that's vague, though, that's very.
Well, I don't think there's anything big about the environment.
So,
But that's just me.
Take it all.
I mean,
That's just
it's-
me.
It's, what about it, though? Of course, we all want to protect the environment, but what are our priorities, and what's our goal here? That's
I
what I'm
think
trying
there
to-
are hundreds of priorities when it comes to protecting the environment. But me
Well, let's
specifically,
not-
the two that I come to me first is drinking water. We're losing our drinking water. We're losing clean drinking water
That's
every
very
day.
important, yeah, that's extremely important.
And the wildlife that lives around those open bodies of water.
Right.
We're losing them as well. Beavers, they're almost gone. Otters, I'm excited when I see one. 30 years ago, I was like, another otter. Now, I haven't seen a beaver in probably 20 years. Why not? You see the beaver?
I see them chewed on.
You see the signs of them, but they used to be plentiful. We had bank beavers in the river down here beside Riverfront Park.
Yeah.
And I went down to the park one morning at 4 o'clock and waited and waited. I did that a couple of times. Finally, one of them came out and I was like, oh my God. But my point is, you didn't have to wait around and hunt to look for them. They were plentiful. They were everywhere.
Right.
There were
I mean,
farmers, but that's just a small portion of the wildlife.
Yeah.
We are losing our wildlife and we are losing drinking water. And I think this just takes us to go, whoa, not rush through a site plan and take the time to do this. That's what I think.
What I miss.
So it's not about, I mean, so that sounds like you're saying you just want to take more time. And
I don't
if-
think we-
if
yeah.
we didn't, if we changed it and we still took the same amount of time, then the goals still being met.
A 20-foot buffer?
Well, but it doesn't have to be 20, it could be 50, I don't know. It doesn't have to be 100 or 200, I mean, is it about the time that we spend, or is it about this number?
I think it's about protecting the wetlands. That's what it's about.
That lead your name. That is what it's
But
about.
this is about the buffer outside of the wetlands. So it's something completely different than the wetland itself.
No, the
No.
buffer protects the wetlands. Having the buffer protects the wetlands.
Well, how much buffer do you need? That's-
Well, let's go back to-
I think Catherine's
Let's go
point-
to,
I think Catherine's point about this type of water we're talking about as to whether we need 20 or 100. If you're talking about Silver Lake and think about that, if you're talking about water that people are drinking that can flow into wells or whatever, I think that's a real concern, or it should be.
Okay, well, let's just take, for example, the case we have coming up, I guess we can't talk about maybe, I don't know, but the storage place that's coming up. And they have a wetland over there that we're gonna have to work around, right? We want a 100-foot buffer around that when they're,
is it open water?
I mean, I don't know what, I think it's just, I think it's swampy, I don't know.
Then that would be the 20-foot buffer.
Here's,
Is it 20 foot?
it seems to me, one of the few things you can't do in a wetlands buffer, regardless of whether it's 100 or 20 feet, is build a building. And that would probably be the significant, gain to some property owner who's looking at a 100-foot buffer right now under today's regulations. If we went with what's proposed here in Amendment 2, all of a sudden that person, there's a large percent or some chunk of their property where they couldn't build a building today, where they will be able to build a building come March. Other than that, almost anything can be obtained through a conditional use permit. So if you guys are of the mindset that you'd like to see the possibility that someone could erect a building, because it does seem to me reasonable that someone could, build a building, let's say 65 feet away from a wetland of significant value in a way that protects that wetland still. So rather than remove the 100-foot buffer, maybe there's a way to, I guess maybe we should focus in on that. Doesn't that seem like the one thing that really is up for gain or loss here, whether you can build a building in the 100-foot buffer? There's not much else you can't do through a conditional use permit.
So what's the purpose of this amendment?
So,
Well, I think it would make it such that, again, the purpose, I put it in here largely because of what I thought I was hearing, is that people were saying this is just too much, it's too confusing, it's excessive in terms of protecting, when people saw some of the water features that had 100-foot buffers and were saying this is a little much. And I tend to think that there probably are some areas of town where there's a 100-foot buffer that's, maybe it's to build, like I said, to build a building within 65 feet of that wetland. Could be, with incorporating low-impact development techniques. It could be done in a way that's not so bad for the environment. I guess I don't have a suggestion at the end of this, what I'm saying, other than maybe looking at the possibility of creating the opportunity for also being able to obtain a conditional use permit to build an actual building somewhere within the 100-foot buffer, if it's done in a way, again, using low impact development techniques, whatever it may be, maybe mitigating elsewhere in the buffer, done in a way that's still going to protect the environment. I could look at that for, either our public hearing or for next year.
I don't see anywhere in this where it allows the building of a structure unless it's with a pre-existing primary structure.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you've got a building that's already there. and
No,
now you can
I'm
build-
saying, I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say is one of the only things of real significance that you currently cannot do is build a building in the 100-foot buffer.
Can't have a parking lot built buffer.
Yeah. So I still think the building is the most important one.
Even the dirt one?
No parking of vehicles that compacts the soil. It's like if we didn't have
Well,
this
see, that's a big
100-foot
issue, but-
buffer in the zoning, right now, we would have cars parked within 20 feet of an open wetland. But because we had the zoning, we were able to stop that.
So you don't wanna even allow one car.
I can tell you right now, I drove a pickup truck for about 2 months before I realized I had an oil leak. Then I stopped and I fixed it. But I didn't know I was leaking oil all over the environment. I was horrified.
So if we don't.
So it only
change
takes
it,
one.
though, What Jari is saying is we won't even be able to build small structures within.
If they're associated with a legally pre-existing primary structure, and if it is demonstrated that no practical alternative exists elsewhere on the lot. I mean, right now, and for a while I thought that we should change it, but as you drive around town, most of the places that this is going to affect are where we have structures that really could have a huge impact on open water because they're commercially used.
So,
And
could I
you have
ask-
Silver Lake that
I mean, what is,
you
is there
have
groundwater?
the ability to build some commercial structures. And I'm thinking of a property right now that has a brook running through it right to Silver Lake. Silver Lake is a drinking water source for Lockmere. That's where Lockmere gets their water, it's from Silver Lake. Do we want to contaminate it? It also feeds the Tioga Aquifer, which is a
are
huge
there
wildlife
other-
area.
What I'm just curious about is, are there other groundwater protection rules already in place that?
Not in the town of Tilton.
In it, for the state?
Well, the
I mean-
state may have
I mean,
them.
Around the lake, you can't have septic.
You have shoreline protection.
You can't have stuff like that.
But I think that-
Doesn't-
We should be good stewards of the environment and not just rely on someone else to do it for us.
We have housing all around the lake, over at the lakes too, right, the cars parked
And the health officer gets involved with that as far as septics and whatnot.
there.
I work with
But not
DES.
the cars leaking into the lake.
Nothing I can do unless I see it. I've had a couple that I had, 2 people call me. They were right on the mark and horrified what was going on. One was right out here on the river. And I went over and sure enough, somebody's doing an oil change and there's the oil cans that had rolled down the embankment. One was in the water. Hard not to come
Yeah, I
unglued.
mean, it does happen. No, I'm not saying it's good or anything, but.
Right, but because you had
we
local
didn't have
eyes,
seen- Yeah.
because you had local eyes, I was able to do something. I mean, you're gonna call it DES, they're underfunded.
Well, that was
I'll get up there next week. Okay.
Gary, you had something to input?
Yeah, but there's a, sorry, board member.
No, we're good, I think.
No, one of my concerns is the area on West Main where you've got the river. You've got a lot of undeveloped area along that river, and a lot of that property is now for sale. And my concern is that there could be some issues there, and that's open water, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Geez, Jane, that's a
True,
very good
with
point.
with the 100-foot, that would
Yeah.
protect it.
Yeah, what I was gonna ask is just sort of a general, are you guys thinking just drop this one? I mean,
I would like to drop it.
I'd
yeah,
like to drop it.
I would like to drop it if we don't have more information.
okay.
I think we should get more information.
For next year.
I mean, the options are, because this one, I don't think we can safely, the state law requires that we have at least one public hearing, and we have 2 public hearings if necessary. This is a really important one. I would not want to
Shove it.
run this up so we only have one public hearing, which means we've got to leave today, with something that I can put, something I can put on paper to prepare for the public hearing. So it seems like, I mean, based on what I'm hearing from you guys, we kind of need to drop it probably. Either that or, you know, say instead of 100, we want a 50 or something. Or what I guess I'd like to do is look at expanding potentially conditional use permit, you know, the option for going for conditional use permit for a building within the 100-foot buffer in some way that still limits it significantly. And yeah, I think we need to push that off for a year, I guess, if that's the way we want to go.
I think we should drop it.
Okay.
Now, having had this discussion this following year, as we go forward with site plans, keep in mind how it's working, how we use it, how we maybe make notes. But you know, the other thing is town meeting voted for this. They approved that 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
I don't really want to drop the ball. And Jane, your point is well taken about the river down there. I forgot about that. That's a
And
huge.
I think along with that, we need to look, I believe when you start a building, well, I think you have to look at our definitions of a structure. If a structure's in that area, that can be a parking lot. And that parking lot can cause a lot of damage to open water too,
Mhm.
or to any wetland. So I think we need to look at more than what this is looked at.
Okay.
I agree. Eric, we haven't heard from you. But you can see you're thinking.
Thank you.
I can almost hear you thinking.
So my thought was, while we are protectors of the watershed, what do the other municipalities that protect the same watershed that we're trying to protect have on their books regarding development around these wetlands? Meaning Taberton,
Standard.
Belmont, Northfield. What do they have? Because if we're being that much more restrictive than the other towns, then maybe we need to look at this and say, you know, geez, well, they can, you know, they can just go to Belmont and they can develop, they can put that building, you know, 30 feet from the river or the lake or whatever, you know, or a body of water of some sort. So therefore, yeah, we're protecting it, but are we being overprotective? So I would be okay with postponing for a year, but, or at least getting that type of information, because I think we have a balance here that we have to do. We also want to encourage development, but are we being more punitive? I don't like that word, but more punitive versus the other towns that share the watershed that we are protecting.
Jane's
I
good.
think we already know how Belmont feels, because they weren't willing to make any changes whatsoever where our aquifer sits, which is over the trash company. So I still think, regardless of how they feel, we have a stewardship as a planning board for this town to be concerned about what happens to what we do to carry out our stewardship. That's our goal, really.
It sounds like this is not happening this year, so, right? I mean, we can probably maybe move on. I want to make sure we are providing our public opportunities to participate as.
Hi, public.
Did,
I think this is a marvelous opportunity for the planning board to look at this issue over the course of the next year, maybe even communicate with the Conservation Commission. The Environmental Law Institute has a whole thing about wetland buffers, wetlands, and how you write the language, and Portsmouth has all kinds of buffers, 25, 50, 75, 100, and definitions for each of them. So I think there's a lot of information that's available so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and do it right.
Environmental Law Institute, you said?
Environmental Law Institute, ELI.org. And they have samples from New Hampshire towns
Nice. Do we have an opening on the planning board?
Yeah, absolutely. I've suggested we have you know what I've suggested, an ex officio Concom member. I think it would be great.
Oh, that would be great. Why couldn't we?
They,
Talk to the selectmen,
they didn't
find out.
want to do it. I mean, the Concom members didn't want to do it, but we could do it anyway, so.
Well, it just means it's there if they wanted to.
Yeah,
Somebody might.
yeah.
Sorry, so I'm excited.
All right, number 3. Okay, let's see. Which zones are accessory dwelling units currently?
It's gonna be anywhere where there's a single family house permitted, so let me just grab the list so I don't miss one. Village residential, mixed use, medium residential, RA, rural agricultural, and RC, resort commercial.
So basically everything but industrial.
Yeah.
No, everything not downtown, not RG, not GC, and not industrial.
And then Article 10. Should I go not far enough? Where would you put that in Article 10? Separate?
It's 10.8. I'll just, if I may, this could be allowed a number of ways. It could be allowed, it could be not allowed as it is now. It could be allowed through special exception as I've proposed here for the sake of initial discussion. It could be allowed by right, which is how attached accessory dwelling units are allowed. There's no trip to the zoning board required at all. Or it could be allowed by conditional use permit before the planning board. So those are all options.
What is our definition of a detached accessory dwelling unit?
Well, we define attached by attached through, I think, conditioned or living space that can be conditioned, something like that.
The accessory dwelling unit shall be attached to the single-family home by at least one interior door, which may be locked.
I thought we had something about conditioned space.
But you have in here established that detached accessory dwelling units. What's the definition of a detached?
We don't have a detail.
Well,
Resident?
it would be one that, you know, is literally a separate structure.
But do we have a size constraint? Do we have?
Yes, what is it, 35, 750 square feet or 35%, whichever is greater. And that could remain, probably should remain in my mind.
Our definition doesn't say it has to be connected by at least one interior door, but I guess it doesn't have to if it says it here.
There were all kinds of examples we got when we went down to that meeting in Concord, too.
Mhm. You know, I mean, I think the reason the state wrote the state statute as they did, where it was kind of, you had to allow attached, but you had the option of allowing detached, was to, you know, try to minimize the sense that the state was imposing statewide zoning and say, you know, what we're doing is largely going to leave your neighborhoods looking this still like single family neighborhoods. Whereas if, you know, we'll let the towns at one by one decide whether they want to allow detached and potentially alter the character of the neighborhood.
I wouldn't be opposed to just allowing a detached accessory dwelling unit as long as we added the language that it would have to, maybe abide isn't the right word, by all setbacks, including front, side, rear, all setbacks.
That would be easy to amend it to say that, wouldn't it, Dory?
Yeah.
So in other words, you know, somebody had the room.
I agree with that. Good point, Andrew.
Now, when they abide by all the setbacks, does that include to have sufficient parking?
It's a residential lot, so if they want to park on their lawn, you know what I mean? It's like when I first became a planning board member, this was like my second day, second planning board meeting, this fellow came in, they were site planning him, because he owned a residential home up on School Street, and he wanted to build a parking lot. I was sitting there for about 20 minutes figuring out, why is he here? So finally, I spoke up and said, I don't know why this gentleman's here. This isn't a commercial use. If he had birthday parties, he shared a driveway with his neighbor who always complained because his house guests would park in the shared driveway. So he wanted to build a parking lot in his lawn. I said, if you want to dig up your lawn and put a parking lot, go for it and do it. It's got nothing to do with us. I didn't make friends that evening. But, so, if you have a home, you're going to have a barbecue, everybody coming over, and they can park all over your property, wherever you want them to. So, to answer your question,
Well,
no.
let me ask you this question, is that gonna, and only because I'm not sure what those places are zoned versus the list of zones, but like up in the Tree Streets area where there is an issue with parking.
They wouldn't be able to,
Was that,
They-
do these districts,
the,
I know, like, I live in the village.
We require 2 off-street parking spaces for every dwelling unit. So,
but that's new building. Would you also for accessory dwelling unit?
yeah,
Would you?
yeah.
No, there, I was on.
So they would have to, if I put it, let's just say, and I don't know if I'm allowed that, because I forget the list that you said. I believe I live in the village, and I want to put an accessory dwelling unit on. Do I have to create 2 more parking spaces?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how you get out of it. You're creating something new. We have right below
It says
10.
off-street parking.
Yeah. That means off-street. That means you got to provide 2 spaces
That's
within
easy.
the confines of your
It's gonna be my
property.
neighbor's house.
That's not what it says. It says 2 off-street parking spaces required
Yeah.
for each unit in condominium apartment and multifamily dwelling.
Yeah.
So if I said, okay, I'm gonna have them parked down in the public parking lot by the former post office,
Yeah.
why wouldn't that work?
Uh,
Or in this parking lot?
I think
Because it doesn't
the
say you
intent.
can't.
Yeah.
No,
It doesn't
I
say it
don't
has
know.
to be on the property.
Yeah, that's,
I think you.
It says 2 off-street parking spaces. So as long as they're off the street.
yeah, it's really not defined.
Okay. I don't know how you want to handle that. We enforce it as you have to have 2 spaces on your lot, for every dwelling unit.
Didn't be able to
Well, while we're having
But,
a
Yeah.
public meeting, why not change that definition?
That's fine. It's elsewhere. Okay, so let's see, how do we want to handle this? If you want to sort of charge me with going through the ordinance, I'm going to make sure my instructions are clear here. Going through the ordinance and making clear anywhere that it says 2 off-street parking spots are required for every dwelling unit, it has to say on-site off-street. Is that what you want me to do?
If you want to be specific, because somebody wanted to take us to court, I think we would lose. Because clearly,
yeah, I don't like it.
if the
because-
town lets me park in that parking lot,
Yeah.
it's off-street.
Yeah, I mean, I would not want to see that.
If if I lived on Chestnut Street and I went to the Catholic Church and I said, I don't have enough parking, Father, would you please allow, free
Yeah.
parkway over here in this corner?
Well, see, yeah, Plymouth has a lot of
He's a nice guy. He would say, absolutely, yes, it's off-street.
And they just cram everybody in there, and they're parked on the lawns and whatever. So, that's part of the problem. Don't do that. I wouldn't want to see this in densely, in village districts or whatever. Densely.
Okay, so for number 3, what Catherine is proposing is that it not be by special exception, but that it be by right, provided we make it clear that you have to abide by the setback regulations. How does the rest of the board feel about that?
All 3 setbacks, no exceptions.
Okay.
Because we have some exceptions for setbacks.
I see what you're saying,
What are
yeah.
they?
But they vary.
Mail them out, yeah.
Yeah, I do. Like in residential districts, the code enforcement officer has the authority to allow certain things within the side or rear setback, provided it doesn't occupy more than 10% of that setback.
So this would have to be
Yeah.
no exceptions. They would have to be completely, whether it's 20 feet, 30 feet from the front or whatever.
Have we gotten any like applications for accessory dwelling units?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
No, not a lot, but a few. I mean, there was one where he went to the zoning board and got a variance to allow for a detached ADU. And that's, in part through that, but also conversations I've had, again, as you read the why the change, this was, I believe you guys, well, the state and you guys are allowing for accessory dwelling units by right, because you want to expand housing options and you want to make, you want to meet the needs of a changing demographic. And the reason this is in here is thought, let's not cut short what might be reasonable for allowing for options.
Yeah, I agree by right,
Okay.
as long as no exceptions on the setbacks.
All right, and then I'm going to put in a potential additional amendment, and I can, I guess, put this on if this is what you guys, as long as I understand my instructions clearly. Anywhere it's not clear that anywhere it says that 2 off-street parking spaces are required for dwelling units, I need to go ahead and propose a change to make it clear that those are on that property. You
Yeah,
can't
that
just
same
have.
parcel.
Okay. Now, what if someone does live right next to a public parking?
They could get a variance from the zoning
Okay.
board,
All right.
right?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so,
Why would we
Yeah,
Why would we
want
think it's
to allow
okay to
that?
fill up our public parking with private individuals on a daily, when those are spots we need for our businesses downtown, which is another concern we have?
Yeah,
and-
right.
Well, they have to abide by the hours because all the parking lots that we control around Main Street all have, you have to buy a permit for overnight parking and they're for tenants, so that would be a tenant situation. And some of them you can't park all night in. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know the parking ordinance, but there is a parking ordinance. They'd have to abide like everybody else to those rules and regulations. I mean, you have a point, you wouldn't want to
I
fill it
think
with
that's a
those.
disservice
No,
to
But
our
on the other
downtown
hand,
merchants.
Right, we're
But-
talking about constantly.
hopefully the planning board, the selectmen could go to the zoning board and say, hey, look, we've already got this particular parking lot maxed out. But I can't think of a parking lot on Main Street where somebody could build next to, or put an accessory dwelling unit next to.
good point.
You got Tilton House,
Future.
this one's,
That we
Bounded
would
by a
be
railroad
out
track.
in the future too.
you'd have to have some buildings move. You couldn't build next to the one by the post office. Not a residential,
It's that White House there. Across from the-
commercial. The doctor's office, or he does, but he has on-site parking. He does that, I think he had a, I don't know if there's a parking up there or
I
not.
just like designating it that it has to be on that parcel, then in the future we're covered.
Yeah.
So we're meeting after meeting to try to figure out what to do with our downtown, and parking keeps coming up. Well, why are we doing that disservice
Oh, I was thinking of-
for a homeowner that should have that amount if that's what they
They
want to
couldn't
do?
abide by
Yeah,
the setback.
I think it's true that we do have, that ADUs are not permitted downtown district, but you're right. With it might as well be clear. Al and I certainly approach that element of the zoning ordinance as though it's required to be on site, so we might as well make it clear. I mean, I think, yeah.
Well, it's easier for you to enforce, to
Yeah.
say, no, it's right here,
Right.
it's black and white.
Yeah.
This is what it needs to be.
Yeah,
No, I'm sorry, your neighbor will allow you to park there, but
right,
what if your neighbor changes hands, blah, blah, blah.
yeah. All right, so is that the consensus of the board to do it by right on amendment number 3? And have it go before come to the public hearing that way? All right.
And then clean up
Yeah, right.
okay,
That'll be an additional amendment.
work.
Yeah.
Number 4, remove the current requirement, property owner occupy one of the units.
This is already what the state has mandated, correct? What they have mandated now?
I can't, I think, no, so the state says that the town may require one of the units be owner occupied, and we went ahead and took that. Some of our thinking in putting this forward was a single family house does not have to be owner occupied. So why should a single family house within an accessory dwelling unit have to have an owner living in it?
Can I have more than one accessory dwelling unit on my house?
Not by right.
Because I was gonna say, well, now you're gonna start getting into
Right.
apartments.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
we may not allow apartments, but if you can only have a maximum of one ADU, then I guess, what could a two-family house have an ADU?
Not by right. Yeah.
When we went to those, when we went to that meeting, it was down at the Audubon, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes, it was.
Weren't they thinking of these accessory dwelling units mainly for, other family members like, Meme and Pepe?
No, they
and-
weren't.
Young families.
They started out as mother-in-law apartments,
Exactly.
and as mother-in-law and father-in-laws were dying, the people had these nice little attachments, and they wanted to rent them, and we were saying, no, they can't, and that's why, because of that and the changing demographics, that the state said, let's do something about it, and that's why they did it. So
So if it's an accessory unit for a separate dwelling unit from the whole, I guess, I don't know, why does it matter if the single-family home is owner occupied?
Because, again, back to Plymouth.
I really
they
don't know.
They don't care. They buy them for their children or whatever. I mean, this probably won't happen that much here, but it's something to think about. Somebody from Connecticut comes up and they buy it, they let the kids have it, and they don't care, and there's trash everywhere. You can't get them to
Yeah, I see
do
it.
anything
Oh,
because they don't care. They're not
I see
there.
what you're saying, so they
Yeah.
just become, because you can rent out a single-family home,
Right.
And then rent
so
out
it just now becomes a commercial rental.
like
Exactly.
whatever, whoever's there.
Yeah.
And
But-
no trash is picked up or dealt with, and you can't get any kind of, get them to be responsible. Just can't even get a hold of them. But,
That's a good reason to make it owner occupied.
yeah, and that's what.
do we really know how the state law reads on it?
They gave us
I'm
options,
pretty, I haven't looked at it in a couple of years, but I'm pretty confident that it says, the town may require that one of the units be owner occupied. And that maybe you're not allowed to say which one has to be owner occupied, I think it goes further to say. If you want, I can look it up real quick. But if it sounds like, I don't know which way you guys are leaning, it may or may not be necessary for me to.
Now, when we created this zoning, it was by those state
Yeah.
Except,
changes, and it does
Yes,
say one of the dwelling units within the structure shall be the primary residence.
what I'm saying
It
though
doesn't
is,
say which one, it
No.
just says one of.
Yeah,
It,
that's fine.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good how it's written.
I think we should leave it.
So leave it as
You
it
make
is.
a really good point.
Is that,
Why did you want this? Is there a reason?
yeah, it says, like, if you read the why the change, to just make sure we're offering as many options for both renters and people who own large structures that they may not have enough family members to fill anymore, that we're providing as many options as possible, you know,
Yeah.
For those people.
But there wasn't any reason beyond.
and then the other thing was that we don't require that single-family houses be owner-occupied. So it seemed kind of almost, I'm not gonna say unfair, I'm gonna say almost unfair, that, you would require a single-family house with an ADU to be owner-occupied.
I think you're talking apples and oranges.
That's fine.
I think Juliet makes an excellent point, because you could change the whole atmosphere of a residential neighborhood
Sorry.
by having an outside commercial entity own
Or
the single family and the ADU.
Yeah, they could own a whole bunch of those.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then you really have some,
Chairman told.
Yes, great.
yeah. that
I'm
would be-
looking at a chart. It says what standards may, must, or must not be in this ADU regulation chart. And one of them says may require the property, it says ADU standards that must or may be in regulations, may require the property owner to live in either the principal dwelling unit or the ADU.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought you said you weren't sure.
Okay.
It doesn't say which one they have to, it doesn't say they have to know.
I say don't change it, leave it alone.
All right, so drop number 4, is that, okay.
Alrighty, number 5. Let's see. Requirement that outdoor lighting be shut off by 11 PM. Is that currently just in commercial, or is that everywhere in town?
Townwide.
Townwide.
Who knew?
Well, we brought this identical amendment up either 2 or 3 years ago, and there was, somebody had an objection to it, and we dropped it. So, but it occurred to me then, as it occurs to me now, we have, there's some serious issues with this in terms of what's going on in the landscape. I'll just leave it at that.
I mean,
Have you ever driven through Tilton at past 11 o'clock? This ordinance
I
is
didn't
not
know
even,
there's-
I mean, there's no way, this is not even being close to followed, and it,
yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's not something we should brag about.
well, I was gonna say, I wanted to leave it at that. But let's face reality, this is not like the fact that the camera's on is gonna tune people into
But
this
here's
fact.
the
I
other
mean,
thing, here's the other thing. There is within our zoning, I'm almost positive, a height restriction
Yeah,
that I don't think is being followed.
So this doesn't say
And that
that,
includes with new development.
right?
It is just businesses.
Just businesses,
This is
What?
commercial property, right?
commercial, right?
And industrial.
I don't think the ordinance calls it, I can't remember that it calls it out that clearly. I think it just says all outdoor lighting has to be off by 11, I mean,
I know, but in
it's
your
written
right
right
to
there, actually.
change, it's talking about businesses, so
Okay.
that's why I'm confused.
Because they're the ones that are really impacted. I mean, I don't think anyone really cares if some residence has a light on past 11 o'clock.
Well, I know
But there's a
that-
grandfather period to this zoning, this lighting ordinance we have.
Yeah, I don't want to, that's a whole nother issue, but, I mean, let's look. Here's what it says, right here. Remove item M. M says parking lot lighting shall be shut off by 11 PM unless a specific scheduled event requires parking lot lighting to be left on until the event is finished. Blah, blah, blah. So parking lot lighting, I guess you could say that, obviously kind of suggests business, but
Take for instance,
When was this written? Because life has changed considerably since this was written, probably.
yeah, when we, oh gosh.
2009 was when it was adopted.
I think there's safety issues that,
I don't think so in a parking lot. It doesn't say the lights on the building itself have to be turned off. It says parking lot. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, the lighting issue we had
Mhm.
with a resident
Oh, yeah.
up behind us because of the lights.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
I mean, I think Kohl's and Walmart have both been open for like a week straight, like without closing their, I'm guessing.
Yes,
And I don't think they can really operate that way without having some parking lot lighting on. So we're essentially, you know, to say this, you know, I don't know how you guys want to handle that. There's obviously some issues there. You know, one of New Hampshire's premier retail centers is, you know, we're not going to tell Kohl's that they can't have extended Christmas hours. Do we want to tell them that during those extended? So, I mean,
can't have midnight madness and.
Okay,
exactly. I
but
mean, there are huge issues with it.
neither of those facilities back up against a residential area. Now, let's talk about Lowe's. And was it Grant Street?
Yes.
We also had a huge lighting issue there with the residents on Grant Street. Wall was built, and then Lowe's assured us that at least the lights on that side would be shut off at a certain time all night long, till the morning.
We
Well, that's the only
always-
thing that solved it.
Every time we site plan, we talk about the lights and the neighbors.
The effect on, when we just stood up here across from Lowe's, the effect of those lights on the residents. Now, they have enough lights in their parking lot that are away from the residents that could be left on, and I don't think we said that, you know, so maybe we're looking at, instead of all or nothing, somewhere in between.
Mr. Prater?
I'd almost bet you $1 that when we had that area across from Lowe's before on the board, we didn't even discuss the 11 o'clock lighting issue, because it was gonna be run 24 hours.
Mhm.
So what were we gonna do? I'd make 11 o'clock.
Cono, oh, across the street?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I had a
did.
long conversation with him about lighting
We
in the
did,
residential
but we didn't
neighborhood.
say, oh, no, wait, doesn't even matter, because 11 o'clock, you gotta shut your lights off.
It's
He
true.
moved light poles,
Again,
and we talked about the
But we didn't
buffer.
talk about them shutting them off.
we didn't say,
Actually,
Article M, 244, you gotta shut your lights off
we
at
didn't
11.
have to, it's in the zoning.
But it's.
Well,
it's-
theoretically, we shouldn't have
talked
had
about
to.
hours of operation. We talked about hours of operation at Taco Bell. We know, I mean, we've got an issue here that is real, it's a real issue. I mean, if Al were to come back from vacation and we would say, all right, Al, 11 o'clock all through town, I mean, we'd have some serious issues.
Yeah.
We'd have people that we.
Yeah.
But that's why you can't disturb our residents in that way, because here's the other problem. And 15 feet is the height, the tallest height for a pole in a parking lot, is 15 feet. That's in our zoning.
That's short.
Why isn't it enforced?
Because it goes by planning without us even looking at it.
But we don't have to say, we don't sit here and say, read out all our zoning, these are the exceptions, it's already on the books.
Yeah.
So why isn't it enforced?
It is looked at. I mean, I don't feel
See,
like.
D, lighting other than, I think, you know, somebody's gonna correct this.
I guess I can't think of all the.
Street lights mounted on poles or structures shall not exceed a mounting height of 15 feet.
I
Needs to be
certainly,
enforced.
I look at it, I tell people about it, I feel like we generally enforce it. I can't think of, I'm not gonna say I've never missed a light, or Al's never missed a light over 15 feet, but
I mean,
How long has
this
it been like that?
is
Because-
2009.
but this is all
And
the
this
big
should have
places
been
have really
enforced.
tall lighting.
I mean, we had, we had Tilton School come in, we required them to, obtain a variance for their height. It's something,
Yeah,
it's not unenforced.
but all the big.
I think as long as we are able to have the conversations like we had across from Lowe's about how lighting affects those residential properties, we're okay.
So you want to take it off?
It said, for me, it says parking lots.
Well, that's, yeah, that's.
If we said, all lights beyond a perimeter of, I don't know, if we're gonna wanna protect the building 40 feet from the building have to be shut off at 11? Because,
You can't enforce that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, as a business owner, I wouldn't come to Tilton because are you gonna cover me liability because someone parked 50 feet from my building and they get mugged on the way to their car?
if you're closed,
I'm open till 12 midnight. I'm open till 12 midnight.
well, can't you get a special exception? Or, I mean, see what I'm saying?
But you
Why
know,
does
make
it
it-
have to be all or nothing? So for, what, a short shopping period in December,
I'm not talking to short, I'm a restaurant in Tilton. I am open till 12:30. Last
if
call
we
of the
allow
state.
it,
No, we do allow it.
Very good, yeah.
The state of New Hampshire says I can serve alcohol, usually last call is at 12:45,
yeah.
2 hours after your order. So I'm gonna send someone out and, okay, maybe they're at a .05, they walk out and because they didn't see a stone in a parking lot because all the lights are off, and they fall and they break their ankle and they come after me.
But see, when we site plan Kettlehead, it's in a residential neighborhood, right? And they're not open until 12:30.
I'm not talking about Kettlehead, I'm talking about other places. Just in general, you can't say, here you have to be,
But we have to make an exception for residential neighborhoods. You have to.
Suppose, but,
And I don't know what that is.
Well,
they'll shut
let's-
the streetlights off that shine in my house at 11 o'clock.
We can have the street light gone if you want.
Well, no, because it's safety.
No.
Like I said, all or nothing. It shouldn't be all or nothing. But I do know, because we've had these incidences take place, Lowe's, School Street, not School Street, Lowe's, Grant Street, and we had residents complain about the proposed development across from Lowe's. I can't think of that street. Yes, thank you, Morrison, for lights, all concerned about the glare of the lights.
But again, when we were site planning that spot, we never said at 11 o'clock, you gotta shut your lights off.
No, they're gonna put in trees, and instead of deciduous trees, they're gonna put in evergreen trees, and they moved lights, they took lights away from that area.
Yeah.
But according to this, they have to shut off the lights at 11 o'clock.
Right, we didn't have to say it, is what I'm saying. We didn't
That's why this is.
we didn't have to say 15
this
feet.
is a problem.
I think
But
that's,
how are you gonna protect a residential neighborhood? Can we still? So I'm waiting for you to answer that, I'm sorry. I should have asked you directly, I
Well,
usually do.
I
So,
mean-
if we take out the requirement for 11 o'clock, as a planning board, yeah, we still have the authority to say, okay, then no lights on this, within
And
so
we do
many
that.
feet of this.
Every single time we've got, like,
It would, but then you're gonna have the developer who is saying, where does it say, and why are you guys arbitrarily picking me out that I have to shut my lights off at 11?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm
Oh.
saying, let's take the property across from Lowe's, Morrison Avenue, because that hasn't been built yet, so we're not really picking on anybody. That gets developed. We were very clear on protecting
Yeah.
Morrison Avenue
Okay.
from light pollution. So whether or not they shut their lights off at 11 o'clock, east of the property, on the east side, isn't going to affect anybody. Nor is it on the southwest side, because that's woodland and the river, or the front. It's going to be on the west side.
right, and that's one of the things I.
So as long as we still have the ability to say, okay, but you can't put lights here,
Right.
or within so many feet of here, I don't care how many candles, we've already experienced that evolve.
Have you had questions about this, Dari, recently?
People don't bring it up.
Let's leave it
I-
alone.
What? No.
Well, it's just hard to enforce.
How about this? It's real, I think it's not good, particularly for, to have regulations that we all know exist and we all know we're not enforcing. And they're it's blatant decision on the town to not enforce. So I think if what Catherine is saying is that we go ahead and go forward with this amendment with the knowledge that the planning board has the ability every time it conducts site plan review to say, you've got to shield these areas of this property from this, such and such. As long as the planning board continues to hold and utilize that authority, then we can go forward with this amendment. Is that right? Yeah. And what I could do as an added measure is do a little bit of work and see if I can come up with some, and if you guys will authorize me to do so, I'll incorporate this at the public hearing and the documents available to propose maybe another sentence or so in the lighting ordinance that makes clear that the planning board has the right to do all the things Catherine was saying. And then you guys can look at that at the public hearing and decide if it works, or we can change it at the public hearing. Does that make any sense?
It does to me, because Eric makes a very good point about, I didn't even think of people getting bugged in the parking lot. I was only thinking of the building, but that's a good point.
So I'm not trying to say that we have a high crime rate that's happening.
No, you're right. If I'm gonna if I have to do something, I have a problem with my car, I'm gonna pull into a parking lot, and I'm gonna hope it's well lit.
Even like
You're right, and then
Banger
leave.
still shuts off a majority of their lights at night, but they keep some of the center ones on, especially around the food establishments, they keep those on all night.
You're right. Good point.
Okay.
I
Does
know
that work?
nobody else feels. I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
You gotta tell us what you did
Thank you,
with number
Solomon.
6.
Okay. I don't know.
Did you have anything on lighting?
Oh, yeah. This is town-wide. It's not just being proposed for the Ridgeway corridor. So when I put up 35 high sodium lights on my house, because I want to be protected and I want to feel safe, this will not impact me, because I'm in a rural agricultural district. And nobody's going to enforce it, and it's not going to be a good thing for the neighborhood. So I'd like to see something on districts where this would be acceptable. And the other piece that DES talks about is everybody wants to be safe. So once it's clear that you can put lights up all over the place or in your parking lot or wherever it is, there's going to be a rush to judgment to do that. And that also involves energy consumption, which DES has suggested should be something towns consider when they make changes. And the other thing would be, while you have great language about lumens, there really isn't a lot about the high density, low density, or LED requirements for lighting. Or for some places where they have total shielding for the lights. We know they're downcast, but they're different kinds of downcast lighting.
Isn't there something in our lighting that does allow us to require different shielding and extra shielding?
Yeah, there's actually a lot about different shielding, and again, this article is only specific to parking lot lighting. I mean, no, I'm not saying we don't have parking lots in the RA district, but, so yeah, if I understand what Ms. Mitchell is saying, she's concerned that a parking lot in the RA district, if we remove this requirement, would now be able to have their lights on past 11 p.m. I mean,
Except the planning board only says plan commercial property, so if you're talking about a residential property,
right.
Yeah.
that would be under the disorderly ordinance, wouldn't it?
Says it, can that fall under nuisance?
I'm thinking,
Should be a separate thing on.
it would be an ordinance for the selectmen to look at.
That's what I'm saying.
How do we want to, do you want to move on, or should we?
What does everyone feel that,
I like Dari's suggestion on the lighting. Are we talking about number 6 now?
No,
No,
it's
no,
number
back
5
to
still.
lights.
This is 5?
All
I
right.
like Dari's
Yeah, I just-
suggestion for
all right.
lighting.
Okay, so number 6 is the one I have to,
Neighbors are a nuisance, you let them know.
I haven't gone there yet.
sorry.
Yeah, explain this to me.
Okay, sorry about this. It should say, are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 6 as proposed by the planning board for the town zoning ordinance as follows, amend Article 6 to replace the term, no, sorry. Amend Article 6. I don't know what I did here, I'm sorry.
You cut
The-
and pasted poorly is what you did.
Yeah, definitely that. And, okay, are you in favor? And Article 6 to,
Article 6 and what?
Wait, are we still back on number 5, or did we move on?
No.
so amend Article 6, the charter permitted uses to include a line titled small scale manufacturer and designate that such uses are allowed by special exception in MU, RG, RC, GC, DN, RA, and IN, and not permitted in VR and MR. And then, and then add the definition, small scale manufacturing, a use engaged in the production of food products or other goods in which such production results in no impact or minimal impact to surrounding properties is determined through a special exception hearing before the zoning board of adjustment. The reason I put this in here is we've experienced, I guess, only one that I can think of at the moment, but probably more than this, instances where people wanted to, well, no, I can think of actually 3. Instances where people wanted to manufacture something downtown. In one case, it was mead, which is like some kind of alcohol.
It's made with honey.
Meat, okay. And I said, well, manufacturing is not allowed on Main Street. And I thought, what a shame that we can't allow breweries or wineries or mead making or, you know, some high tech, you know, or some assembling of goods or anything that might fall under manufacturing we don't allow on Main Street. And it was my thought that I know there were very prosperous times in Tilton's past where Main Street, where there was a lot of manufacturing on Main Street. You know, and I think, I'm not saying we want to bring back all the nuisances that might have been associated with those, but it does seem like there's some level of manufacturing that can reasonably be done downtown. So my initial reason for putting this in was really focusing on Main Street. But, and so when you see all these additional districts I added, those could be knocked off. However, it occurred to me also that why wouldn't, if it's of minimal impact or no impact, why wouldn't you allow it in mixed use? Why wouldn't you allow it in RG, RC, GC?
Does anyone know when we disallowed manufacturing on this?
Probably when EPA came in and shut all malt down off the river.
No, the reason why I ask is because, not to mention about Plymouth again, but this happened, and this came up, and the guy who owned Anderson's Bakery, this is
Yeah.
Baker, or not to say names, but he didn't want any other bakeries, so he disallowed, he was on one of the boards that disallowed manufacturing. So it's all bakeries.
Yeah, hold on, I'm coming.
Interesting.
And so they've just recently overturned that, they had this.
Hey, sorry, I'm
Because you can't have a bakery
planning
there.
board meeting up here.
So it's
No, it's okay.
Huh.
But the state doesn't recognize a baker as manufacturing.
But it's a town, I mean, I guess it depends on our definition.
So I have a question for you. Did we allow a manufacturer going on Main Street?
Pardon?
Okay. Did we allow a manufacturer going on Main Street?
Yeah.
Count it, because they manufacture and sell.
What zone are they in?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're out of the village area. Yes.
But this says
Young people
not
and
permitted
teenagers.
in village. So,
No, I think they're gonna.
Yeah,
no, I'm
Well,
saying,
that's what he wants.
we're talking about downtown.
Yeah, yeah.
Downtown is village, right?
Downtown is VR, and I believe they're in,
No, downtown is the end.
Kettlehead
Right.
is.
well,
I
Main
thought-
Street is DN.
Okay.
Kettlehead is what, MU?
I don't think so.
Yes, they are. There's Deer Street.
Deer Street
It's
is
something
the
funky
market
there.
line.
Yeah, there's something funky
Yeah,
right there where it's
that's the line.
You're right.
They're either in MU or VR.
The,
I think they're in MU. Yes, because there's Park Cemetery,
Oh, is this a question, sorry?
there's the condo, they're in MU. Cut it up.
People at the antique shop.
They're in mixed use. So, how, you're
Hang on, Dari has something else to put in.
you're, so the first part of small scale, I'm sorry, am I supposed to be talking?
it's okay. Board members come before everyone else.
Oh, no, did you have something?
I was just gonna add that I put out a message on Plan Link, so I've been asking other planners about this matter. And so 3 replied. Plymouth was one of the replies.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Is Catherine up there?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak.
Do you need her?
Well, she just received a phone call and they were looking for Marcus.
He's here. If they want him, they can come and get him. Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome. Give her a call. Thank you.
Don't ask me to watch your child because he's mine until I'm ready to give him
I
back.
guess this is why we have night meetings.
It's gonna be night by the time we get out of here.
It will be, yeah.
So 3 towns got back to me. Plymouth was one of the towns. He mentioned the bakery. And then the 2 other towns that got back to me say they allow these kinds of things in downtown areas through conditional use permit.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I don't, we don't use, we just have the 2 instances where we use conditional use permits, wetlands and groundwater. We're not really set up, we don't have like these blanket criteria that, I think one of the towns, Dover, she sent, they have general special exception criteria which fit well. We'd have to develop special exception criteria in this case because I think both of our instances, excuse me, not special exception, conditional use permit, both of our instances where you need conditional use permit are kind of tailored specifically, the criteria are tailored specifically for groundwater or wetlands. Anyway.
So, the definition, small scale manufacturing, used to engage in the production of food products. Are you going to exclude agricultural?
Are you saying because,
Couldn't make cheese down there?
So, yeah,
What do you?
Well, I'm grandfathered, so it isn't going to cover me. I'm already selling food products.
No,
but-
but what do you extrapolate on what you're thinking?
Well, because this is allowed, it's not permitted in VR and MR. Rural agricultural, this would be allowed.
I
Right.
think, no, sorry.
Again, if you're going to allow small scale manufacturing, how does that differ from agricultural? I think this should exclude, there should be a line in there that said with the exception of agriculture, because that's a whole set of state laws that govern, agriculture and the promotion of, et cetera, et cetera. So I can see people, buying up a farm that maybe isn't producing now, isn't grandfathered, and wanting to turn it into making goat cheese and whatever else.
and you want to,
I want to make sure that that's covered by the agricultural laws and not this small-scale farming. Because this would require them to get a special exception to do what they should be able to do in the agricultural area without an exception, which is to produce food.
So what is our current definition of small-scale manufacturing?
We don't have
I don't
one.
know.
That's paramount first, because we keep getting hit in the butt every
Yeah.
time somebody comes and we don't
Well-
have a
Well, that's
proper
what your
definition.
first-
It's not a term we have right now anyway, so, but yeah, if we were gonna add a line, absolutely, we would have to define it. And my definition is, you obviously see there, the one I stole from, I can't remember where. But, so there are state statutes that protect agriculture, and regardless of whether we put a note, they would trump what we have. However, I would be more than happy, leading up to the public hearing, to add some language that says, none of what's here shall all of such RSA, whatever it'll be, still applies, and that, this regulation is not intended or nor shall it serve to, go against any of the agricultural provisions that the state has carved out. Something like that. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, kind of cleaned up, neatened up. But yeah, I'm just saying that, it's already allowed in agriculture. The state has got lots of guidance on it. They want to promote agriculture in the state of New Hampshire. And we shouldn't have to have somebody come and get a special exception.
Well, that takes care of the agricultural end, but what about other things people might wish to do?
Well, I think the small scale manufacturing, this definition would pretty much cover that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think, other stuff we don't need, don't have those state protections that we, right. I think they would just fall into this, and it would become a matter of determining whether they meet our special exception criteria.
My only problem with this is such production results in no impact or minimal impact. That's so subjective to surrounding properties.
Oh, yeah.
So what's my idea of minimal or, no impact? It's probably different from everybody else's.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to hear or smell anything. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Even a bakery has got the smell of yeast and whatever. Yeah, I guess it would be.
The byproduct of beer making stinks.
It can be.
Yeah, well,
That's a good smell.
We could specifically put something about noise and odor in there.
Well, I'm just thinking I don't know how you do without,
I mean, we could say no nuisance no nuisance noise or odor to surrounding properties.
Similar to the nuisance.
So you could say results in no impact or minimal impact, such as but not limited to.
Sure.
Yeah, so like what if somebody wanted to do hydroponics next to you and had grow lights on all night?
Yeah, such as but not limited to, and then some.
Such as are not limited to what we have.
Well, like he said, like
established.
light.
Oh, you didn't
smell.
finish the sentence, so I just.
Oh no, because I was just adding to what he said, what Dari said.
Yeah.
So you just write down some things like he said noise, smell, visual.
Mm-hmm.
Noise,
Such as,
smell.
but not limited to.
Not limited to means you don't have to list them all. I can't think of them all.
Well, you're not proposing to eliminate all noise and smell.
Right.
No,
Just
that's why it
nuisance.
says such as but not limited to.
And nuisance will be the term.
It just kind of, so it's not quite so subjective.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you mean by that? I
Yeah.
mean by, things that are really noisy or really stinky or.
Right, if they violate
Yeah.
the noise ordinance.
So it kind of gives them an idea where we are with it. In our zoning board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gives them some
We're
guidance.
not gonna manufacture adults in
Yeah.
That's a whole other story for that.
there. That's another day. Floodplain development ordinance, number 7.
No, wait a minute, on number 6, the adult care facility.
No, no, no.
no.
That's.
No, that's
I
not
just
part of this. That was
completely screwed up the
that
language.
was
So copy and paste it.
bad cut and paste.
Oh, so adult care facility doesn't go under number 6?
Yeah, it's got nothing.
That was last year, wasn't it?
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
That was just a
Yeah.
leftover.
So,
We're
are we
not,
looking for a definition for
we're
that?
not manufacturing adults.
No, we're not.
No, that'll be next. Right now, we're on something different for number
On the
7.
floodplain for a
Oh,
moment.
floodplain?
Yeah. These were
I
just
don't have my degree.
handed to me directly by Jen Gilbert from the OSI. To me, I don't see anything in there that's not simply technical, and I have no problem I didn't see anything that concerned me. Beyond that, she's doing it to help keep us in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Programs.
Are they getting rid of the map?
One of these days, Belknap County will be digitized. I mean, it's been, I think almost every other county's been digitized for like 10 years now, but for some reason Belknap County is not.
Well, it's like they're getting rid of, so it says, come on page 47. So map, agency, boundary rate, that's what we're on. So 1, 2, 3, beginning with the following regulations in this ordinance shall apply to all lands designated as special flood deposit areas. And then what they got crossed out is and flood boundary and floodway maps of the town dated May 1st, 2009. So they're only gonna have, together with the associated flood insurance rate maps?
But that's actually, I think it's always been that now you have one decider, one place you go to decide whether it's in the flood zone or not.
Okay.
And that's how it should be.
So
And
they're
that's how it's
consolidated.
always, I mean, ever since I've been here, I've always made any determination based on the firm, they call it, the flood insurance rate map.
And we're not worried about area of shallow flooding?
Apparently not. I mean, again, this is kind of technical stuff in my mind, and we adopted it. I believe Tilton adopted this as this was probably boilerplate.
Yeah, it looks like they're mainly cleaning it out.
Yeah.
Tightening it up, I guess, is maybe the word.
Yeah, and then next year, she did give us a model ordinance that we could potentially look at adopting in next year, but for now, this is kind of what she said, these housekeeping items that needed to be addressed.
So why are they doing this? Are they just doing this across the board? A lot of-
I think
or-
I think they look at towns one by one through a cycling basis. We had a visit from them, actually, about a month ago. 2 people from the state came and sat down with Al and I, and we spent a couple hours going through our processes. I'll say they were actually very pleased, and Al was specifically complimented for the way he's been managing the program. But that's, she brought this when she came to visit us.
Seems like they're just cleaning it out.
Yeah. We go forward with that. Is that the consensus?
Yep, I'm fine with it.
So I guess, yeah, this is on 13, building inspector, and it's yellow highlighted. What does that mean?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think,
Should be code enforcement officer, correct?
I feel like it could be either. Maybe that's something to look at. I think our zoning ordinance in Article 10 refers to his position as the building inspector. Just might as well keep it, I guess. All right.
And why do we have the application for administrative appeal of public
I'll,
session?
so that's what I was.
Number 9?
That would be number 9. Yeah, I'll explain.
Oh, I can see, I've got the old one. I didn't pick up the new one. I've been using the one I printed off the computer before I left.
And you probably have the same one.
Yeah, you
We're a little
should.
convoluted here. We're just,
Yeah, because I put one in front of you. So you
I
got the one
just pushed it over to Eric.
here. Oh, okay. So that's that. We're on this one now. The email with number 8 at the top.
yes.
Okay. Catherine, thank goodness, mentioned that we need a definition for adult residential or residential adult care facility. And I was like, oh yes, we certainly do. So I did a little stealing again and came up, you'll see toward the bottom, there's a potential definition in italics. And this is an email I sent to Tom Mead, the gentleman who organized the petition zoning our amendment last year on the same matter. I just wanted to keep him in the loop on it. And he had some good points that I think were covered on, but I will double check on that prior to the hearing. Just making sure that anything we do doesn't serve to render last year's amendment no, I'll say. I think we're fine. But really, what I'd like to propose is that what you see in italics become our definition for either residential adult care facility, which means I would have to modify it a little bit. What I'd like to think is, as you see in my email to Mr. Mead, I'm saying, as I'm thinking about this, if a teen drug and alcohol facility were to show up next door to him, he would probably have the same negative reaction, and he probably wants it to cover all types of residential care facilities, not just those where people 18 and over might be. So that's why I came up with this, and I guess I'm seeking the board's, approval.
Okay, so this is for the definition of adult care, like is up at the top, facility. That's it.
Well, he changed it to
No.
residential, not
Okay,
adult,
that's
taking the
fine.
adult out.
So
So
his
this is it.
petition was adult residential care facility,
Yes,
and that's what's not allowed in the agricultural area?
right.
Or I could have a teen.
Apparently,
So anybody under 21 is not an adult, or is it 18?
whatever it is, and it seems to me, you get 14 to 18-year-old drug and alcohol facility, you're going to have all the same concerns, if not more, than you would. These are young people who are just as capable of being just as good or just as bad as.
Drop the adult and just make it
Yeah,
residential.
exactly, yeah.
So we, even though that passed last year as adult residential care facility, could change it so that it reads residential care facility, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and then we come up with this definition that I did some internet research. This was from it's actually a city in Colorado that I pulled this from. I did change some of the wording, but the vast majority of that is just, again, taken from that city's website.
Did we add it to our zoning yet, as adult residential?
Yeah, it's on the first page under institutional. No, it's oh, yeah. Sorry, you've got the right page.
Child
Yeah.
daycare facility,
The
or
one under-
residential
yeah.
adult care facility.
Yeah.
Okay, so we would change that
Adult care facility.
to residential care facility.
Residential.
Change to that. Okay.
So we're making it stricter.
Or broader, anyway. I mean, the question would be now, if somebody came in for a teen, what would it be, a residential teen care facility, in some ways we could say, sorry, it's not on our charter permitted uses, therefore it's not allowed anywhere. That'd be problematic, obviously.
All right, I'm a little confused because
It's not even in our definition.
Yeah.
it sounds
Right.
like you're defining what we had on Autumn Drive as this, but residential care facility, to me, sounds like it could be nursing care, yeah, it could be child care.
Could, in some instances, where
So-
I think it wouldn't, I actually took nursing home out of there, that was one of the, or nursing something, was in there, and then I replaced it with something else, because we have a nursing home right above it, like 2 spots above that in charter permitted uses, and I didn't feel, if somebody comes in and say, I want to do a residential care facility, and they start describing it, and it's like, no, you're talking about a nursing home, then we would advise them that they're going to be treated as a nursing home as far as the charter permitted uses goes.
Okay, so we don't, all
And I think we,
right, yeah.
do
you're
we
right
have,
about
we have
that.
daycare, right?
Yeah.
Child
Is
Yeah.
that
care.
in the institutional, is
Yeah.
that in the residential?
Institutional, public and institutional, yeah.
And then we have residential adult care. You want it to mean something social, but What about the applications where it's more of a medical thing?
Then it's a,
Is that strictly a nursing home thing?
I think it'd be a hospital sanitarium, I guess.
Do we still have sanitarium?
We
Yeah.
still have hospital slash sanitarium, nursing
Should get rid
home,
of sanitarium.
child daycare facility.
Can we change that sanitarium thing?
It is,
Great.
so yeah,
But we still have sanitariums.
we do. And I remember actually, yeah, Jane, there is a I remember Jane bringing a definition of sanitarium to a planning board meeting.
They
It's
don't
not like
call
it's,
them sanitariums anymore. Just-
Never do.
The
Where?
state-
What do they call Glenwood?
It's not a sanitarium.
Not Glenwood.
Glencliff,
Glencliff, thank
a
you.
nursing facility.
That was a sanitarium.
It was.
There's two
They don't
That's what I
things,
mean. What do they
sanitarium
call
and a
it now?
Sanatorium.
Nursing homes.
Two different
Is it
things.
just a nursing home?
Yes.
No, they still have people that go up there, the
For what?
tuberculosis patients and whatnot.
What?
Tuberculosis is not gone from this world.
We don't have facilities just for, they would probably treat them there, it's so
um,
contagious.
and then
I think they do.
I
Where
should
else
also-
would they send them?
we also have medical,
was built
dental,
for.
or health service office or clinic.
So that would cover it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So staying just on this definition at the moment.
Yeah.
Does anyone have objection to how this is written?
No, not me.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where does group homes fall under any of our definitions? And would this be a good residential care facility place to put that?
Where does what, Henry?
Because, group homes,
Oh,
because I
What's your
don't see
What's your definition of a group home?
those who are mentally challenged and can't live in society completely on their own.
Well, there is a line, one of the entries on this is including group foster care homes.
yeah, I thought
But
you said.
foster care is taking care of children who are not adults.
Should we take the word foster out?
No, just do
No.
group slash foster care.
Okay,
So it could be either group or foster care.
okay.
Including group or foster care homes. Well, so what's a group home?
That would take
That's
care
one of those.
Then
Yeah,
hopefully it's not a
right.
problem.
So, in order to fall under residential care facility, a group home would probably, in my mind, have to provide social services in a protected living environment. So if you had a group home that was operating as a rooming house, we would say we're going to regulate you as a rooming house, not a residential care facility.
Okay. It's the only thing I can think of it. Nice job.
No, thank you, thank you.
Now explain number 9.
Okay, this is something that Sheena discovered, and I thought it was very insightful of her. And I think she's right. So, under the special exception criteria, so 11.4 in the zoning ordinance, I included it here. The application you probably don't need, but I just put the application here because it has the zoning ordinance. So 11.4.2 through 11.4.7 are what, when somebody comes in here and says, I want to get a special exception, I say, okay, give me $100, and you gotta, you gotta meet these 6 criteria. And this is what, and then when I talk to the zoning board, I say, this is, you guys are supposed to be evaluating whether someone can obtain a special exception based on these 6 criteria. However, and again, this is Sheena's catch, and I think it was very bright. 11.8.7 on the back page talks about operations in connection with such a use shall not be more objectionable to nearby properties by reason of noise, fumes, odor, or vibration than would, and this is, we could actually add this to our small manufacturing potentially, but anyway, or vibration than would be the operation of any permitted uses in the districts who are not subject to special exception procedures. That's a criteria right there, and it's buried at the end of the regulation. in such a way that the zoning board is not using it as a criteria. And
The
if you
zoning board
guys,
isn't using the other 6 as a criteria.
all right, if the intent is for that to be treated as a criteria, and that's, again, it's written as a criteria, it should probably be moved to become a 7th special exception criteria. And so if you guys want me to do that, I'll basically propose that there be it become what is now 11.8.7 will become 11.4.8, and it'll fall under one of the the following conditions which must be met.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, probably. I don't understand why, so you're making it more of a priority, essentially?
Return it.
But they all should have equal priority, I would think, it sounds like.
It's not being, because of where it's placed, it's not, so you see 11.4.1 ends with a colon, and then this is sort of like the list following that colon
Right.
of 6 criteria. But, so then you're into action by board, 2 copies of the plans, you're past that, you're no longer reading about criteria, and then you get to the end, you're like, what's this? This looks like a criterion to me.
Yeah.
So I think,
I guess when it was written, it wasn't, because if you read 11.8, it may impose the following safeguards. In other words, say no noise, no food, no odor. But I would like it to be an exception, rather than them imposing it.
okay.
Oh, you want your child?
I think he wants to come home.
He's up the stairs.
Thank you.
This is my daughter-in-law, Melissa.
You have to back there?
I have my grandson Marcus.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We throw some kibble every now and
I know, it's like,
He's got my Christmas snacks and he's on the computer.
then. Great. Not that working.
yeah,
Well,
that makes,
it's gonna be disappointing because he can't go far.
it looks like an afterthought.
I think
Yeah.
that's great to move it as an exception rather than something that they could say, oh, by the way, we're gonna impose this on you
Right, you're
as
right.
another condition. I'd rather it be one of the special exceptions they have to look out for the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, good catch.
Yeah, I'll let Sheena know
Good
that.
attaboy, Sheena.
Yeah.
Can we, is now a good time to add anything? I just wanted to know if people wanted to, that, in the zoning about the signage, about the, our lights downtown, about, it says no animated lights, and we're talking about the blinking lights downtown, and the building in the, Main Street shops. Is it clear enough? You know how it says in our ordinance, no animated lights? Do you find that's enforceable, or should?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we find out about a flashing light on Main Street, we,
Do you guys
We-
drive down there ever before you go home?
yeah. Yeah.
Because it's dark now.
Usually
Just go around the block and go down that way and out.
oh,
and
I
look.
will. I mean, the most recent one I can think of was, well, I won't say the name, but a business I walked in, I said, you gotta switch that, so it's, because most of those signs have, settings, and I just switch it to the setting where it's not flashing and you're all set. Next.
Oh, okay, so it's clear enough.
I think it's clear, people are, we're enforcing it, and they're not questioning,
They're not saying, hey, it says
Yeah,
animated.
right.
It says animated and moving signs are prohibited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty clear.
It
That's a
doesn't
good
say
point you
blinking,
made.
though. Yeah,
It doesn't say blinking.
but if they're not.
I guess
you know,
blinking is moving though, right?
That's the way we're treating it, but, yeah.
Which is my phone's still in my pocket.
Yeah, no problem.
It's not in yours? Take my phone.
All right, have a good
See
night.
you later. Blinking's moving. Blinking's moving.
I
right?
think so,
Okay.
but, yeah, I don't,
I have to think about that one.
we could say flashing.
Flashing's moving. Not Nothing's
It is,
definitely.
it is, yeah, I didn't know if people were like,
Well, and it also doesn't say, it's like, I know they made an exception for Walgreens sign, that
How
it could,
often
it could move
oh.
slow.
You can only, see, I like that.
It can move slow.
Yeah. I kind of, people think that's, I think that's good because if you're driving
That's fine.
and you say it can only alternate every 60 seconds, say,
Yeah.
chances are it's only going to change once during the time someone passes by. They're not going to be with every, moment, new message the whole time they're driving. They're just trying not to miss what's on the sign.
I was,
Yeah, but it all depends, because there's a lot of business up in Lockwood that has a sign. If it's a certain color, it's really nice. Whoa.
That thing is, yeah, that thing is a little.
what,
much.
auto store?
No.
I don't want to say the business.
I see it every time I go home.
Green and the lettuce on the hamburgers.
It's pretty bright. And it, you know what? I drive by and I can't tell you how many times, and it always takes my eyes to it.
Yeah.
They were right. With
Well,
Walgreens
as
sign,
we
I was
look-
like, really?
As we look next year at sign ordinances, are we gonna have to really start looking into the lumens with LEDs and all that? Because LEDs is so much brighter than what we've had in the past.
Mm.
Yeah, or how about, how many signs in the downtown area, or special, we do have downtown sign.
I don't say how many times people will, why can't
Well,
I?
how do you pick and choose if you have one though?
Well, I mean, how many neon signs do we want to allow in one shop?
But how do you enforce
We
that?
had zero originally, it was zero neon in the downtown district.
And then if somebody has one of the movable signs and they advertise somebody's business from out of town, is that an off-premise sign?
Yep, I would say so.
Technically,
It's an
yeah.
off-premise message.
Yeah.
What?
So why is JP Carter's sign in Pocket Park not an off-premise advertising?
It is.
It is.
Oh.
I saw that the other day and I'm like, okay, is that?
But it's only up for a short period
Oh.
of time.
Oh, okay,
And
so
it's-
anyone in town can put one
Well,
on their front
if they
door.
want to volunteer their time and decorate one of our parks,
Oh,
they
let's close
can.
that box.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's
So
a-
we can look the other way on some ordinances, but not on others, depending on who it's benefiting.
Well, if they want to volunteer to
Right.
maintain a certain area, I think we can allow that.
So it's not advertising,
It's advertising his business.
it's advertising that they are the ones who decorated that park for
Right.
the town.
Yeah.
And I'm not, that's not, I'm
that's
telling
what
you
Laura's
the argument
So-
I've heard. So it's not saying, lowest rates, best electrical services, or, whatever. It's just saying this park was decorated by.
Right, it's like.
JP
Okay, so
Carter.
when somebody donates a sign to my business, I can put underneath their sign donated by, because they were benefiting.
No, because this is a donation to the public.
Yeah.
So why isn't that just on the town website?
Well, what- don't you
Good
wanna do
point,
all
it
the
could be. I don't know. I'm just telling you the argument that I've
businesses
listened to.
sponsor the
And then the other thing is if like there's a construction company, like there's a building project going.
That's right, we allow those signs.
So we shouldn't put up names.
It's the same thing.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you can allow it, I mean, within reason.
But that's paid advertising that the town has approved.
But it's like, so if,
Answer for that.
And
It's a sponsorship.
so if you have a new business going in town, they're digging it up, and all the trades come out there, all their signs go up.
But they don't stay up after the place is open.
Right, so after the holidays, that sign will go away.
Yeah, there's a difference, like you said, between a call to action, which is lowest rates, or we're awesome, whatever.
We
Just
did this
saying,
for the
adopted
town, that's what
by.
it's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Well, we do it's between that and adopt an island. Like
That's the
adopt
same
a,
thing, yeah.
adopt a brick or,
no, adopt a
Highway.
highway or adopt
Same
a
thing.
stop, like
And
the
I-
islands out here, if they were,
Right.
if ABC Corporation, I'm just, like, that
You know, and so speaking as a selectman, it lets other businesses know what they could do to dedicate their time in helping the town. But other businesses do this, so why don't you do it too? But it will come down when the holiday season is over. Although I'm told that it's not the day after Christmas. I was gonna take my tree down.
Town doesn't have to follow the zoning ordinance, right?
Right,
So
but like I
if
said,
anything can be construed as a municipal purpose, then,
that definitely is.
yeah, right.
It is nice. They have a lot of people that go over there and they do that. And when it comes down.
Because it's nice, doesn't make it right. Just play devil's advocate.
No, it doesn't. You're absolutely right.
What else do we have tonight?
Go home?
I say, is anyone up to this half-hour meeting, 2 hours later being adjourned?
I knew it wasn't gonna be.
I'll second
that.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Bye, Kathy.
Bye.
I have to shut down my computer, but that's gonna take a while.
Wow, it really was 2 hours. That's crazy.
No kidding.
Well, that's a lot of hot topics.
Yeah.
Give me about a half hour.
Well,
Optimistic?
yeah, I guess so. This is work we won't have to do on January 8th, though.
For the next meeting, I'm gonna make a sign that says, I won't want to do it, turn the recording on.